To my retired players, pre-1993, this message is for you. Now, over the years, you've seen the things that I've written about retired players. This section is going to be called The Next 17 Weeks. And for the next 17 weeks, my goal is to provide the type of information and the kind of facts that have been absent from your presence since the invention of these plans that they've come up with for our benefit. We went to some hearings in 2007. It was called The Retired Players and Uneven Playing Field. And some of you went to Congress and some of you saw the NFLPA get up and tell these stories about how retired players are really getting paid. They're getting benefits, but not as fast as they'd like them to be. Well, I know all that to be false. It's a bad thing when you see players that are your own age and they don't have the means in which to take care of themselves when they're old. When they were young, they received benefits, and these benefits were made by the owners, and the owners, for some reason, do not want to pay benefits. So when you look at the retirement benefits that they have now, and you look at the disability benefits, what's behind it is a story. And I intend for the next 17 weeks to tell the entire story. I can't tell it all today because it's just too much. But recently, I filed a 98-page complaint with 28 exhibits to the Department of Justice through the Department of Labor. I have received nothing back from them. I can tell you unequivocally that these people have been caught defrauding the retired players from pre-1993. I'm not going to say that unless I can prove it. And I have the facts within me in these 98 pages right here. And over the course of the next 17 weeks, we're going to be going over that stuff. But there's some things that I want to talk to you about that I think maybe you don't know or not privy to this information. Now, there's an adage that says, if you have information but it's misinformation, then the best you can be is misinformed. If someone is allowed to perfect a concept based upon that misinformation, then what you have is a misconception. And that's what is out there now with the retired players from 1993 back. I have news for you. They don't want to do one thing for you. In 1990, when the retirement board separated from the NFLPA and they went on strike, what resulted at the end of that was the bargaining agreement and the collective bargaining agreement of 1993. And in that collective bargaining agreement, if you read the fine print, you'll see that they excluded all pre-1993 players back from receiving any benefits, from receiving any type of aspect of improvement. And the NFLPA went into business with the owners. Now let me give you an example. Let's use Frankenstein and Dr. Frankenstein. Everything that is in Frankenstein's mind came from Dr. Frankenstein. So if Dr. Frankenstein is the owners, then Frankenstein is the NFLPA. And the minute it got that way is when the owners had to agree to give the NFLPA almost 60% of the revenue that was produced by the NFL. Now, here's 32 guys, they're getting 40%, and then the 1,800 or so guys from the NFLPA, they're getting the rest. So what has happened, and what you'll find out in these next 17 weeks, is they never intended to do anything for you at all. I feel bad sometimes when I see players, like we have this Players Congress. Now, I'm sure that you guys mean well, and your intention, as I read, is that we want to go in and make sure that the owners give us a fair shake. Well, I got news for you. You're not going to get a fair shake from them because it was never their intent to give you a fair shake. As you will see in the next 17 weeks, these individuals plotted against you and have been doing this since 1976. Let me give you an example. This benefit programs that they have, they were all designed to take your money up front. Now, who would believe that in 76, when they started this early payment benefit, that's where they offered you 25% of your benefit. They said, oh, well, here's 25% of your benefit right now when it's worth $7,000. What they don't tell you is that benefit that you got $7,400 for is worth $270,000 down the road. Now, supposedly, this whole program is supposed to be based upon the Railroad Workers Union and the Railroad Workers government contract. So their pension plan is supposed to be exactly like ours. But what you'll find there is that their intent from the beginning, when they offered you that early payment benefit, to take that money and then let it accrue, that 25%, and basically pay you with the same money that they took from you 30 years ago. That's why the pensions are so poor, and that's why I see guys having these meetings about getting the owners to, if they would just give us more money. They took your money. They took the money that you made back then, and they took 25% of it, let it grow, and now they're paying you back with your own money. It's that early payment benefit, the early retirement benefit, the one that they offered you when you were 45, and they told you were going to die by the time you were 56, so you might as well take that money now. I don't know how many guys did that, but 35% of the players from 1993 back are getting their benefits ripped off. This is something akin to the payday loan of today, which is a predator loan. It's unfortunate, but all of that was false. I'm going to use Rayfield Wright as an example. Rayfield Wright played 13 years. His benefit amount is $82.50 a month. That's right, $82.50 a month for playing 13 years in the NFL. So how did it get that way? Simple. When Rayfield Wright got out of professional football, like they did 35% of the players, they came up to him and said, hey, you want 25% of your benefit now? So if your benefit was worth $40,000, then they would give you $10,000. But what they didn't tell you is that $10,000 accruing over 30 years would be $200,000 because they wanted to take your money right in the beginning. They are players who played from 1993 back, and particularly the guys from the 60s and the 70s who are now in their 60s and their 70s, and their pensions are so poor because the people, the fiduciaries, the ones who by law are supposed to have your best interest at heart, these are the people who are taking your benefits from you. Now, all of this that wasn't organized back then. They just really did it ad hoc in a way in which they would offer you your benefit and say, well, here's 25%. You can go to college with that. But they never said what the other side of that pancake looked like. And that's why you're out there now having meetings, getting players' congresses, having all of these groups together to try and somehow reason with these people. You can't reason with them because they're not reasonable. This is why these 98 pages here, it starts out with, I am filing an official criminal complaint with the Department of Justice against the National Football League Retirement Board, the NFLPA trustees, and the legal advisor of the Retirement Board, the Groom Law Group. Now, let me explain briefly. And like I said, this is going to be 17 weeks. So there is going to be a lot of stuff that you're going to find out that you know absolutely nothing about. There are going to be some stuff that you thought you knew, but you really don't know. And the most important thing for you to know now is that these people don't want to pay you a dime. And when they got in this agreement with the NFLPA, this started when they took that 60% of that revenue, and the NFLPA, it then became their money. So when they segregated us, and all you have to do is look in a plan, and it'll tell you that if you got benefits or you played in the National Football League prior to March 30th, 1994, nothing was going to happen for you. If you played after March 30th, 1994, then you were going to receive all of the benefits that are involved in the improvements. As a matter of fact, if you look in the plan and you look online at the NFLPA's website, you'll see where they tell you up front that their goal is to increase benefits for current and future players. Now, they boldly say that the NFL is not obligated to negotiate on behalf of retired players, but they're doing it anyway. Figure that one out. If they're doing it anyway, and this is the condition that you're in, what are they doing? They're coming after benefits. I've represented 4 or 5 people and gotten benefits back from them when these people have taken them. And what I've seen over the last 17 years and what they've done, I'm going to be showing you exactly how they took your benefits, how they tricked you out of your money, and how they're paying you back when your paltry benefits with the same money that they took from you back in the 70s and back in the 80s. Mike Webster was a classic example of what happened. Now, see this right here? This is from the NFL, and it says, Upshaw's remarks are interesting. Right there. See where it says, Court NFL Pension Board abused its discretion. Now, it's obvious that Mike Webster was dead when this happened. But yet the NFL, they vehemently fought to keep his beneficiaries from getting those benefits that he was entitled to when he was alive. So what bothers me about this system is that it's fixed. It'd be different if it were fair. Lawyers are number one on the mistrusted list, and then they become judges. So it's up to the principle of the integrity of the process to make it work. But when the judges and the lawyers both agree that they run the show, then you have circumstances like this. Here's a circumstance involving Mike Webster. Now, this is what these people did, but I want you to listen to, because they do this all the time, but listen to Upshaw's response. Number one, it didn't come from him because he wasn't that smart. It came from a lawyer because that's who's running the show, and all that stuff will unfold. But let me read to you exactly what they did. When a court of law that is not friends of the NFL, they're going to come up with decisions like this and language like this. When the courts or the judges are in the pocket of the NFL, and that's right, I mean in the pocket of them, then you're going to find a different kind of language. But thank God, here's an example of how the process worked. Now it states, this is about Mike Webster and about after he died, his family trying to get the benefits, and a court really saw the right thing when they recognized that these people abused that discretion all the time. Now, this is what they did. It says, a federal court of appeals has affirmed a 2005 court ruling that the NFL's pension plan wrongly withheld disability pensions from Hall of Fame center Mike Webster. Now, the ruling will result in Webster's surviving children and former wife collecting between $1.5 and $2 million. The court's finding that Webster, who died in 2002, was permanently disabled as a result of brain injuries from playing football. Webster was the center of the Pittsburgh Steelers for 4 Super Bowl winning teams in the 1970s, and he played briefly for the Chiefs before retiring in 1991. Mike Webster, after he retired, Webster, suffering from symptoms of dementia and chronic pain from football injuries, was unable to earn a living and became homeless. He died of a heart attack at age 50. Now here's the important part. In particular, the appeals court agreed with the U.S. Maryland District Court's finding, saying that the NFL pension plan, quote, abused its discretion by ignoring the unanimous medical evidence that established March 1991 as the onset date for Webster's total and permanent disability, and did so again by refusing to set aside time for the deadline for Webster to file a claim for disability. In particular, the board ignored the unanimous medical evidence, including that of its own expert, disregarded the conclusion of its own appointed investigator, and relied for its determination on factors disallowed by the plan. Gene Upshaw, the late Gene Upshaw, he said, now the executive director of the Players Association, which seats members on the retirement board, told the board that they would follow the same course of action if presented in the similar case. Now, think that through. He just said they would follow the same course of action of disregarding conclusions made by the investigators, disregarding the evidence to come to their own conclusion about it. Gene Upshaw, the executive director of the NFLPA Players Association, which seats members on the retirement board, he told the Times that the board would follow the same course of action if presented with a similar case. Now keep in mind now, they found all these things that they did that were wrong and that abused their discretion. Yet he said we would do the same thing. That means they have no fear they have no conscience of consequences for what they do. That's why they can say, we all feel badly for what happened to Mike Webster. Yeah. But obviously, there are a lot of players who go through similar circumstances. Now, in that sentence right there, you have to look at the unsaid. What he's trying to do is nullify the fact that Webster's case was unique because you people knew that he was messed up, and despite that fact, you still didn't provide something for him as fiduciaries. Now, Upshaw told the Times, but you just don't award a benefit to someone going through a tough time. What do you award a benefit for? Now, that's how it works. Webster wasn't denied benefits. It was a question of when these benefits should have started. Now, it's ridiculous for me to sit here and quell with the idea that somehow Gene Upshaw had anything good to say or do about the players. Because in these 98 pages here, you're going to see what happened over the last 7 years from what these people have done to the retired players behind the scenes. They don't want to pay benefits. They don't want to pay disability benefits. They don't want to pay retirement benefits. And they will pay more to prevent you from getting that benefit than they would for the benefit itself. It's just something about the idea that these people don't want to be responsible for what they've caused. Now, in these 98 pages, I go through when we went to the Department of Labor, we went to the Department of Justice, and they did nothing. I've told them and showed them where these people had violated the law, how they had simply disregarded what the plan itself said, and simply made it so hard and difficult for players to get benefits. We're going to be going over this information for the next 17 weeks, but I just want to give you a little heads up on what's happening. These people never intended for you to benefit from anything you did in professional sport, particularly if you started in 1993 back. All those people get nothing. Now, here is a letter, and this is going to be my first one that I do next week. It's going to be about Johnny Unitas, because I spoke with John Unitas in 1997. John called me and said that he was having a problem with the people from the NFL Retirement Board, so he knew that I had some experience in that, so he asked me to take a look at his case. So I look at his case, and I asked him, I said, John, what did you sign? He said, well, I signed the application for retirement benefits. I said, why? He said, because they told me that if I go through the application form for retirement benefits, then that way they can work on my disability benefits, and then I'll be getting them. John Unitas was a great guy. He was from Pittsburgh, just like I am, and he believed that these people were not going to treat him like that. Not because he was Johnny Unitas, but because he didn't deserve the kind of treatment that Johnny Unitas was getting. Not special treatment in a sense, but in a way, in a sense, to let you know that it doesn't matter who it is. So John Unitas calls me, and he tells me that he signed this application form. And so I said, John, did you read what it says down right where it says to sign your name? He said, no, I just signed it and I sent it back. And then all of a sudden, they started sending me retirement checks. But I didn't cash them. I waited for almost 4 months, and then out of frustration, he said, I cashed one check. A week later, he got a letter in the mail saying that he was no longer eligible for disability benefits because he was now getting retirement benefits. And the rule says you can't get retirement benefits and disability benefits at the same time. So now here's what John signed that he didn't read the fine print. It says right where you sign your name. Now, in regarding a pension from the Burt Bell Pete Rozelle Player Retirement Plan, I certify that all information on this form to be true and correct to the best of my knowledge. Now, here's the kicker right here. And that upon receiving pension retirement benefits, I will lose coverage for total and permanent disability benefits under Article 4 and 5, and widows and survivor children benefits under Article 7. So in other words, they duped Johnny Unitas. So nobody's safe. And they had it, they did some type of a HBO special, and on this special, it was called Unitas. I talked to Ray Didinger, who was the NFL Films guy who produced this show, and it was on behalf of HBO. When he saw the condition of Johnny Unitas in his arm and how he was really disabled, he said, I'm not going to do this unless I get an opportunity to talk about this man's disability. And the NFL said, well, why do you have to do that? And he said, because I couldn't tell this story honestly unless I put this stuff in there about who Johnny Unitas is now. So then they said, well, could you let us have our say on it? And so they said yes. Now next week, because he's going to be first here, because I want to show you that if they'll do this to Johnny Unitas, there is no one who ever strapped the uniform on and put an NFL jersey on that after they were through playing, that their benefits or what's owed to them is safe. Those who knew my husband know that he too experienced the pain that so many retired players endure. In the last few years, John's famed right hand, that same right hand that helped launch television's love affair with the NFL, was virtually useless thanks to the beatings he had taken every Sunday for 17 seasons. He could barely grip a pen to write his own name. This is tough. He couldn't button his own shirt without using a button hook device that he made. He couldn't play golf without strapping a golf club to his wrists so he could hold on to the club. Like many of you, the injuries he endured during his playing years came back to haunt him decades after his playing career ended. And like many of you, he was denied disability benefits. Well, I offer to you, he wasn't denied disability benefits. He was tricked out of them, like the majority of the players who played before 1993. I'm telling you now, these people, if you played from 1993 back, don't have any expectation of your benefits improving, because they are not going to do it, because you are not in the equation. If you read the language, and when you go over this next thing when you're in school here, and I'm calling this summer school because you missed this the first time around, they simply rely on you not knowing what's going on. Well, for the next 17 weeks, and in honor of the 17 seasons from Johnny Unitas, we're going to explain to you exactly what's going on, how you've been duped out of these benefits, how they fixed the law so that you couldn't get the benefit. You know, they say the NFL pays all legitimate disability claims. Okay, look at legitimate. How can you have 50% of the players by the NFLPA, by their own calculations in their studies? 50% of the players come out injured, yet 1% of the players get benefits. So they boast that we're 25-1 when defending the plan. So somehow in their mind, fiduciaries whose sole job is to act in the best interest of the players. Yet look at what is happening now, that people are out begging them to at least be fair with us. I submit to you that in the next 17 weeks, you will know that somebody here has broken the law, and that every dime that you're trying to get from them somehow acquiescing to what you want now is not going to happen. The only way it's going to happen is for you guys to realize that somebody on that side has violated your rights and violated the law. But unfortunately, they have the system so set up that you can't win, because the system is fixed in a way where the lawyers and the judges run this show. And for some reason, I don't know why, they simply don't want to pay you. It's not like they don't have the money, because look at the money they pay these kids now. This guy named J.J. Watt, great player, $100 million. Larry Little was the first offensive lineman in 1974 to make $100,000. Now these guys make so much money that you would think that when Pete Rozelle said in 1960 that the benefits that you receive will be in direct proportion to the amount of benefits that you'll get based upon the revenue that the National Football League brings in. Now, the line of demarcation is in the plan. That means where your rights stop and where others' rights who aren't even playing yet. This is for current and future players that this is being built for, not for the players now. Because somehow along the line, when Frankenstein and Dr. Frankenstein got together and decided that the best way they would proceed was from 1993 on, and from 1993 back, all you're getting is the shaft. And the NFLPA and the owners colluded in that spot. So if you really think about it, the owners didn't want to pay to start with. So they now meet up with the NFLPA, and they're giving the NFLPA 60% of their cake. And those 32 rich white men are taking the 30% or 40%, whatever it is, of their take. So the 32 get that close to 40%, and the 1,800 get that NFLPA, they get the 60%. The NFLPA doesn't want us to get a dime from it. So in the plan, go back and look at it, because what they've done is create a line of demarcation where you, as a pre-1993 player back, you would not receive these benefits. And in here, I'm going to show you how Mickey Davis and the language that they use with regard to players and disability. This is a Ponzi scheme that's going on now. But the bottom line is they simply don't want to pay. They've never wanted to pay. I have an affidavit from a guy who had a disability. His name was Chris Getz. And Chris was a lineman. He played 3 years, and he wasn't really vested. This was like in 1993. So Chris, and I took his case for him to see if I could help him, but it was too late because he had already signed away his rights. Chris Getz, in 1993, went to Dr. David Navasar, and Dr. Navasar said the following: the NFL does not want to pay benefits. The owners don't want to pay. He said, I've never qualified anybody for the benefit you're seeking, and that was the lowest benefit that you can get. They simply don't want to pay. So if a doctor is telling the guy that he's examining that he's not going to get a benefit, then obviously the doctor has been told not to qualify him. And you're going to see horrendous stories that are contained in these 98 pages about the things that people have done. But I want the foundation of this to be understood, that they don't want to pay benefits. So it doesn't matter what you put on top of the foundation, it's still going to reflect what the bottom line is. Now, they didn't want to pay the NFLPA. But when they won their case against them, the first thing they did was embrace them with the idea that, hey, we don't want to pay for retired players from 1993 back, and we know that you don't necessarily want to be responsible for retired players from 1993 back. So why don't we have this joint colluded effort to pay everybody the great benefits, the greatest benefits on the planet is what they call them, from 1993 on. Look at how great their benefits are. And you know what you got here? You got them saying, well, it's unfortunate to you guys from 1993 that it's not the same kind of money that the players are getting today. Well, that scam was said by Mickey Davis as she tried to tell the public to then it would come out as somehow they feel bad for us, but the amount of money that we made, it's just not the same as the money they're making today. That's right, because when they put that cutoff date there of March 30th, 1994, everybody on, they got money. You back, you got nothing. And what it should have been like a blue chip stock. That if you played in the late 1950s, the early 1960s, in the mid 60s and 70s, you should have a great pension for giving up that meat of your life, that filet mignon of your youth that you gave to the NFL, and 50% of the people that leave there hurt. Now, you want to see, do I seem like I'm angry? This isn't anger yet, but I'm going to get mad. Because I'm angry about what these people have attempted to do, and yet still pretending like Goodell's sitting up there pretending like somehow what he's saying is not a lie. Now, he said in an article, well, the NFL is going to do what we always do. We're going to listen to the doctors. I got proof here that says he's lying. Now, if you're lying, you're lying. Look at this Ray Rice thing, what he did with there. Now, it's important to understand in that little space what he tried to get away with in the public, because they haven't been scrutinized like that with the group of people that they have, because they've been too busy trying to keep older players from getting any kind of benefits, and they made that like a quest for them. But when the NFLPA came up, they made that a job for the NFLPA. So what you have here now is you have people who don't want to pay benefits and the people from the NFLPA who believe that we're not entitled to any of this money. We're not entitled to any of these benefits. And they've been involved in this since 1993. They brought in the Groom Law Group. And when the Groom Law Group came, everything changed. The rules started to change. The language started to change. The things that were supposedly sure things that you were going to get all started to change. A couple things they recognized in the 1990s is that people who had dementia, they were entitled to a benefit. These people no longer are entitled to a benefit, and they've done all they possibly can to make sure that if you have dementia, which is prevalent now in the 2000s, but there were a few people that in the 1990s, they recognized that then. That's why they changed the rules. There was a guy by the name of Dick Klein who played in the 50s, late 50s and the early 60s. He died in 95. He had dementia. He was getting a full disability benefit. There's a guy by the name of Dwight Harrison who got a disability benefit in 1993 for dementia. And by the way, Roger Goodell was sitting as the 7th non-voting member of the retirement board during the days of Paul Tagliabue. So Roger Goodell was privy to every single thing that's in these 98 pages, this indictment against them. Because their job and their goal, without precedent, they have no consequence for what they do, so they feel certain that they can do anything that they want. So taking benefits from people, assigning circumstances to benefits, making sure that these benefits that the players got today were going to be great benefits that they could brag about. And then the players that had benefits from 1993 back, they would try to take them. So in the next 17 weeks, my friends, what you're going to see is the exposure of how it got this way, when it got this way, how long they've been doing this to you, the Ponzi schemes that they've been working through this early payment benefit, the early retirement benefit, the Social Security adjustment benefit, and when you took your benefit late, they would call you and try to tell you to take your benefit now because they didn't want you to take it when you're 65 because they'd have to pay you too much money. I'm amazed at the idea that the current players today, they have that blind spot that's been created by the NFL owners, that their entitlement to this money and our ability to say, well, why shouldn't we get some of that? We should have had it like a blue chip stock. It should be today that if you gave those 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 years of your life when you were a youth, that your benefits should reflect that when you retired. You shouldn't be like Rayfield Wright and getting $82.50 because you played 13 years because you decided to take a benefit that they offered you. When they offered him the early retirement benefit, that's when they took 25% of his benefit. Then when he got to be 45, they said, hey, you know what? You can take your early benefit now. But they didn't tell him that if you had $400,000 in your account, if you took your early retirement benefit at 45, because I told you, they said you were going to die at 56, and so you might as well take it so you'll have 10 more years to live. They kind of told you you're only going to live for 10 more years, and a lot of guys bought into that, and a lot of guys believed it who are now in their 60s struggling with these poor benefits at the price of this Ponzi scheme that they started back in the 1970s. So I'm going to stop now. Because, one, I don't want to go too far in this because I could speak forever about what they've done. But I'm going to try to contain it in the next 17 weeks. This ain't week 1 here. This is just an explanation of why I'm doing this and why it's necessary. My goal is to make them cave. And that 35% of those players who took that Ponzi scheme benefit called the early retirement benefit, and they took that other Ponzi scheme benefit which was the early benefit payment, and they took that Social Security benefit, all that was done illegally. So you're entitled to that money back. You're not going to get anywhere by having meetings and having players' congresses. Okay, that's fine. But to sit in there and talk about, well, we think our benefits should increase and we want to try to come to them with reasonableness. You can't be reasonable with these people because they're not reasonable. They have one intent, and that is to take your benefits. Now remember this. Having the retirement board, owners, and the NFLPA in charge of your benefits is like the Klan being in charge of civil rights. Fundamentally, it won't work simply because of who they are. They used to call them the slave owners, now they just call them the owners. But they still deal in human trade. Next week, you're going to get the beginning of how they crossed you out of your future. I'll see you then.